The Isaiah Factor Uncensored starts right now.
And welcome to The Factor Uncensored. Houston's murder rate, a huge problem last year that is major concern for us this year. So much so that our city and county leaders are coming up with multi-million-dollar initiatives to get it under control. More than 470 murders in Houston last year. But what if I tell you that's a drop in the bucket compared to years before? You probably wouldn't believe me. Well, it's true. 1991, let's go there first. A bloody year for the city of Houston. A mind-blowing 701 murders when Houston was officially crowned the murder capital of the United States. I kid you not. In 1981, 688 murders. This is all in 1 year. Now that's mind-boggling. Tonight I speak to Hans Martichek, the former president of the Houston Police Officers Union, and Jimmy Dodson, former assistant chief at HPD and former chief of Houston ISD. Both guys were on the force with Houston when all hell broke loose.
What did it take back then to get a handle on all of this crime? Hans, let's begin with you.
All right. Well, it was a challenge then, as it appears to be a challenge now. I believe it's a little easier to hire folks back then than it is now. But
and why is that? Why is it difficult now compared to then?
Well, with all the defunding going on and the attacks on the police, not just physically, but also verbally and socially, they're being attacked. So I wouldn't understand why any young person at this point in their life would want to join an organization where they know that many folks have problems with the job that they do. So that's an issue.
And so a solution back then was more officers on the streets.
Well, yes, we needed more officers, and we did a couple different things. We ended up putting in power shifts, which were shifts that weren't necessarily your standard 6 to 2 and 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. We may have a shift start at 10 a.m. in the morning and go to 6 in the evening. We have a shift start at 4 a.m. in the afternoon and go to 2 in the morning to get these 10-hour days. Normally the shift is 6 to 2, 3 to 11, 11 to 7, those type of things. We brought in additional shifts. Plus, we also started what we call the 655 overtime program, which was basically adding the equivalent of 655 additional officers into the system in an overtime program. And that turned out to be very constructive and quite helpful.
And Chief, you were in an administrative capacity back in those days, also very active in the Houston Police Department. From your perspective, what was done to make a difference when we're talking about in 1981, 701 murders in Houston, in 1991, 608 murders, nowhere close to the numbers we're seeing now?
Yeah, that's true. And in addition to what Hans talked about with the 655 program and putting more officers on the street, there were several other solutions that was included in that as well. By that time, our community policing initiative had kicked in. We were able to garner more support and more partners that came alongside of us as far as our community relations were concerned. And in addition to that, the courts took crime more serious than they are now. There were more penalties that was handed down that was a lot more serious. There were more cases that was adjudicated a lot faster. And probably at that time, I think Harris County had the distinction of probably having more people in our penal system than any other county in the nation. So people were going to jail, they were staying in jail, going to prison, and serving a lot longer sentences, whereas now they're paroled out on the streets a lot faster. We also finally got the community to understand that we had been crying that we had a gang problem. They understood that when we started implementing our gang initiatives. So along with more officers on the street, along with strong partnershiping, and then in addition to the court stepping up and taking on their serious responsibility of putting criminals away a lot longer, that, in my opinion, helped contribute to the reduction in a lot of the homicides that we saw at that time.
And what was the source of all of these homicides back then? Was it a gang problem, Hans? Was it just random violence? What?
It was primarily gangs and drugs. Same things we're seeing today.
Yeah.
Primarily gangs and drugs. They tend to bring problems.
I had a chance to correspond with a sergeant who's still with the Houston Police Department, and he's been around about 40 years. And he also said back then there were a lot of different squads that were created. Something I've never heard of before. He said a Chicano squad. And he said they were out and they blanketed the area, and that made a difference as well. Either one of you want to tackle that issue?
Well, yes, they were very effective. And not only were they effective in those communities where they were being assigned, but it opened up better lines of communication. That's when I talked about our community policing initiative kicked in full service, simply because we had more officers in those communities where they served the people that looked like them. So that lent a lot of assistance to us that we needed as well. But again, the fact is that you're dealing with a lot different issues today. Besides that time, we had gangs and guns. We still have gangs and guns, but we have more of it. And then two, you have to understand that during that time, people valued life more. In my opinion today, there is a lot less values in people's systems today than there were then. And so it was probably a lot easier to get a handle on things then than it is today. And it's not going to happen overnight. It didn't happen overnight then. As you recall, it was almost a 10-year process that took place. And so we have to invest in those things today if we want to see that crime reduction go down and remain sustainable.
Now, we've already told you here on The Factor about the multi-million-dollar plan to get crime under control here in Houston. After the break, my guests address those plans and expand on the ideas they think will make Houston safer now. We'll be back with more Factor in just a moment. And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. 2021 was a bad year for murders here in Houston, 471 to be exact. But that is minor compared to 1981 and 1991, when there was 688 one year and then 701 respectively the next year. Tonight, two former HPD officers on the force during those times talked about how things were turned around and to address the initiatives now to make things better today.
What we have seen with the Mayor Sylvester Turner, his $44 million plan to tackle crime in the city of Houston, which includes buying back guns, also overtime to put 125 more officers on the streets, more park rangers. What in addition to that would you do if you were still active and still with the police department? What would you recommend?
I don't know if they still have these power shifts that I talked about earlier, but there would always be a group that would work. Again, the hours would be maybe 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., maybe 6 in the evening till 4 in the morning, just to have those additional bodies there to respond to those calls, to get to those priority 1 calls earlier, because obviously we want to make sure that the 911 emergency calls are handled within a reasonable period of time, which should be less than 5 minutes, always less than 5 minutes. And those are the types of things that we need to do. We got to have boots on the ground. I'm just not sure that we're going to be able to hire them as quickly as we need them. That's always the issue too. Out of the 100 applicants that may apply, you may only have 10% of that group that would actually qualify. So,
Chief Dotson, let's bring you in. What would you recommend to the mayor and the police chief now after this $44 million plan?
Well, again, as you and I talked in the past about this, it's a start and it's a great start, but it's an investment that you're going to have to build on. You got to continue to make sure that you keep the ranks and files fully staffed, and not just fully staffed, but you got to keep them fully trained. As the old saying goes, you got to get the right people on the bus. And once you get the right people on the bus, you got to get the right people on the bus in the right seats. You got to continue to do that. You have to continue to forge those strong community partnerships with people out there, because somebody knows all of these individuals. I shouldn't say all of them, but somebody knows a great deal of these individuals that are committing the crimes, and they feel like that they have safe havens where they can go and hide out. You got to make sure that our citizens in this community say, not in my backyard. So if you commit a crime, you're going to do the crime, and I'm going to help you get yourself put in the penal system. Then we got to make sure that our court system is very aggressive to keep people away who are committing these crimes and not letting them back out on the streets when they commit murder and they're back out on the streets in 3 or 4 years. Come on, man. That's crazy. And then we got to make sure that when you do commit a crime, and if you do get out on bond, you violate it, you go back, and you go back and stay in there until you come to trial. Because that doesn't make any sense for people to be out on bond and they're committing another murder again, sometimes 2 and 3 murders. That's asinine. And you're just asking for a community to be overrun by crime. And that's what we see happening today in a lot of our neighborhoods and communities.
Important conversation tonight. Fox 26 is committed to helping keep Houston safe. Our Save Our Streets initiative will go deeper, getting to the root causes of crime, not just murders. Log on to fox26houston.com to learn more about how that is being done right here in our community.